Hello everyone, this is Laura Coleman presenting her graduate project for the Emerging Issues in HRT class through Amberton University. This presentation will cover the hypothesis that the age group between the different generations in the workplace is proving to be difficult for companies to develop their staff due to the wide differences in learning styles of each generation. The introduction is the student will discuss how to train and develop the different generations at work to make sure all needs are being met for each individual and for the company. So what are the different generations in the workplace? There are currently 5 different ones, ranging from people who are 69 years old all the way down to 20. As you can see on this chart, it starts with traditionalists who were born between 1928 and 1944. And they value authority, a top-down management approach. They're very hardworking. And then we have the baby boomers who were born between 1945 and 1964. They expect some degree of difference to their opinions, and they're considered workaholics. Then we have Gen X, who were born between 1965 and 1979. And they're comfortable with authority, will work as hard as possible, and they really like the importance of work-life balance, so family is very important to them. Then we have Generation Y, born between 1980 and 1994. Their respect must be earned. They're technologically savvy, goal and achievement oriented. Then we have Generation Z, born between 1995 here on out. Many traits still to emerge. We don't know too much about them yet. But they are born in the digital age, very fast decision makers and highly connected. So we hear a lot about this age gap. Some of you may be asking, what is the age gap? Well, it's pretty simple. As the previous slide showed us, there are 5 generations in the workplace ranging from 69 to 20 years old. That big range is what is making it so difficult to train and develop employees, because each one of these ages learns differently. So there are some factors to consider with each age group, things like how they grew up. Did they grow up in hard economic times? Maybe it makes them work harder now. Or maybe they grew up in the last 10 years where things were more easily accessible and easy to get a hold of. Another factor would be their education. Back 50 years ago, maybe they didn't earn a master's degree. They only had an associate's degree or no degree at all. These days you're required most of the time to get a master's degree, so just the level of education through school is going to be very different with each age group. On-the-job training, so people who were born maybe 50 years ago have more hands-on training than what kids getting out of college these days. Just things to consider when looking at each age group. It's also difficult due to what is being taught in school now to Generation X and what was taught to baby boomers to know from experience in the workplace. Finding a way to teach each age group the same information is the challenge that companies are currently facing. So when looking into training the age gap, we use Raymond Noe's book titled Employees, Training and Development. He mentions that to successfully manage a diverse workforce, managers and employees must be trained in a new set of skills, which would include communicating with people that have different backgrounds, being able to coach, train, and develop people of different ages, and then training managers to recognize the generational differences. So just being able to identify those problems could help training the different age groups. Going through research on this topic, it's easy to find varying views on what is best to do for the different generations. So let's walk through just a few studies to see their point of views. Some things we'll look at will be what influences the different generations, how to get commitment from all generations, how to train, develop, and motivate the different generations, how to meet individual needs with training and development, and then pretty importantly, how to meet organizational needs with training and development. So let's start off with what influences the different generations. So there was a study done by M. Matthews and his co-authors looking into the different generations, and they found that work environment and culture is what has helped retain the older workers in their industry, which happen to be doctors. Those people valued to be at a place that dedicated time to them and their work. So in this study, the younger generation was not as influenced by these factors because they're not thinking long term like these other physicians that have been there longer. They're just kind of living in the present moment. So this study just kind of showed the physicians that were older wanted more involvement in their work from their employer than the younger crowd did. Then we have how to get commitment from all generations. So there was a study done by L. Carver called Attaining Organizational Commitment Across Generations. And it was a study with some nurses that they looked at. But they aimed to prepare managers on how to deal with and build up the commitment levels of their nurses in their field. So kind of just like learn how to retain and train their employees. So some suggestions from this study were managers should increase their knowledge of the generational diversity through trainings, on-site, online, things like that. And then managers should figure out how to relate to each generation to help retrain and train their employees. Then we have how to train, develop, and motivate the different generations. A study done by Anne Houlihan, if I pronounced that correctly, The New Melting Pot, How to Effectively Lead Different Generations in the Workplace. Her suggestions were to identify each generation to help better understand them, draw on the strengths of each generation, which would prove to be very helpful if you use what each generation's good at. Adapt your management style for each generation. That seems to be a pretty common theme throughout all of these literature reviews. And then accept what you cannot change. Kind of expanding on this topic a little more, new generations at work. There was a study done by M. McCrindle that focused on how to attract, recruit, retrain, and train Generation Y. He noticed some big shifts. They were the aging population, transitioning generations, and increasing options for workers. So let's break those down just a little bit. The aging population, certain industries are more affected than others. For instance, oil and gas. Many of the pioneers of the industry are retiring, and oil and gas is having to train younger people to take over job duties of people who've been there for years. So technology is different, education is different now than what the people learned 30, 40 years ago. Greater focus is on retaining and recruiting. So it's trying to stay competitive in the market, which most industries do, by offering, sign-on bonuses, more vacation time, career growth, whatever it is that can keep people long-term, companies are trying to do. Transitioning generations, transferring knowledge and leadership from baby boomers down to Generation X and Y. So in this same study, he suggested needing to understand their different values and perspectives. So, there's ways to do that by asking, observing the different employees just to see what matters to them most. The generation gap needs to be bridged from both sides, so it goes both ways. I think a lot of times we put pressure on the younger kids to connect with the older ones, but the older people need to learn how to mentor and share their knowledge with the younger people. Baby boomers need to engage with Gen Ys, and then the Gen Ys need to be connected with the older staff maybe earlier on in their careers to help prevent problems in the future. In this same book by McCriddle, Increasing Options for Workers, Generation Y has become incentivized, which I don't think is a good thing. They want to be bought to work at a company, so they're used to people offering them better benefits, better work-life balance, whatever incentivizes them, money, time off. Each person's different, but instead of that happening, it probably needs to be reversed back to something else where it's actually work and not incentivized. How to meet the needs of individuals with training and development. So some suggestions by Raymond Noe in his book were a couple of things you could do. You could survey the employees, which I think is always very beneficial, just to see what topics interest them for training and development. That way you have kind of a direct way to go, point you in the right direction. Make it easily accessible, so things like online training, or maybe have it on site. They can go at lunch, somewhere that's convenient for them, and make it 24/7 accessible if you do it online. People like that a lot. Use performance as a guide. So see where the employees are lacking knowledge by their day-to-day work, which obviously you may not have time to observe them day in and day out, but over time you can kind of catch on to how things are, how employees are performing, and just kind of see what training they might need based off of that. Give it variety, so provide a wide array of topics and trainings will get people more motivated and engaged to attend them, instead of just having one topic that they can go to and being forced to go to that training. How to meet organizational needs with training and development. So this is a big thing that I think people often forget, because the organization needs their people to be trained and developed to meet their company goals. So Raymond Inoue goes through a couple of things. Business strategy. The trainings need to be in line with the organization and what they want to accomplish as a business. And then the trainings need to anticipate the company's needs and be aligned where business is headed. So looking towards the future, the trainings that you provide employees need to be in line with whatever the company is headed towards. Talent management, so you can use this department at work to have them identify who maybe is the high performer in their department, and then ensure that they're getting the specific training opportunities that they need to advance in the company, which helps the company be a better performer as well. So some limitations of these studies. All of these guidelines are not always easy to put into practice in the workplace. They take time, or maybe they're just not feasible for where the company's at right now money-wise. But there's still a lot of unknowns when training and developing different generations as well. So we're still learning. We don't know everything about each generation, and stereotypes don't always live up to their name either. You need to have employees that are willing to learn and develop their skills to help close the age gap and generational differences. So if you have someone that's just not willing to learn or share knowledge, that's not going to help you move forward as a company. Work culture and environment will have an impact on the type of training and development available, and determine the support level from the company on working to solve the issue of helping the different generation learning styles. So some suggestions, we'll walk through each of these. We have a needs assessment, structure, and then dealing with the aftermath as well. So needs assessment. This is very important for any company to do before they start implementing something new. They need to determine if the company is facing the issue of the generational gap, and then determine if the company's strategic plan will be to train and develop the new younger employees to take over the older generations at work, because that may not be the goal. So you need to always make sure you're in line with what the company wants. Then you need to figure out who needs the training and what type of training that is needed to fix the issue of the generational gap. So that'll be through surveying, observing, performance appraisals, just seeing where everyone's at in their career. And then learning how to train the different generations is very important as well. Structure, which we'll break this down a little bit more in some slides ahead. There should be a structured plan in place for when the age gap becomes a problem. So seeing that this is a new trend happening at companies because people are working longer, you need to create a plan to have in place for when this happens. When the older generation leaves the young employees, they need to know how to do the work properly. So starting things that we'll walk through in a minute, like mentorship, being able to share knowledge with each other will help prepare for the future. The aftermath. So there also needs to be a plan in place after the training and developing the different generations to see if it worked, and then future planning to make sure things stay on track for the company and employees that they trained. So you don't want to just do these trainings and not know if they're working, not know if they're advancing or keeping things up to date. So a good plan of action would be have a constant evaluation of the trainings. So you can evaluate the trainers through a survey of the people that attend, or ask the people that attended what they learned. You can ask and observe current employees on a regular basis to see if what they learned is being applied to their jobs. During performance evaluations especially, you can ask them about their future plans and see, are they planning to stick around? Maybe they need more career growth. Just kind of see what they're looking ahead to. And then create a career path for each individual. I think that's critically important to keep people long term, to give them a stepping stone to move towards. The methodology. So this student's methodology for the subject of training and developing the generational gap. in the workplace will be exploratory, just because there's not enough research in the area to best determine the way to treat the different generations at work. We're still learning. So this student needs to determine the best design and recommendations to draw a conclusion on how to address the issue. So conclusion showing implications to the 21st century workforce. This issue is becoming more predominant as more people retire. So specifically in the oil and gas industry, there are several people retiring, leaving the business to kids right out of college, which develops this age gap of lacking in knowledge and experience. This type of age gap can cause problems because the new kids do not know how to run the business yet, and those people retiring didn't share their knowledge to them, which is the problem. The generational differences should be a strength, not a weakness. So having groups of people with different skills can be a good thing, and oftentimes gets looked upon as a weakness or a complication, when in fact it can be useful to have so many viewpoints for a company. So you can see things from different angles instead of just one. So I think that's something people often avoid and don't think about, but it's actually a positive thing. Some recommendations based off this research and literature review, which we'll walk through, is leadership needs to be involved, mentorship is a good option, constant team development, and then variety with the training and development that's offered to each employee. So first off, we have leadership. We've seen this many times. Without the support and guidance of leadership behind any type of training or big move in a company, it will be hard to get employees to see the importance of it. They want to see that leadership supports them. So some suggestions would be have management attend training first. So maybe if they attend it first, employees will think, oh, it must be important since they did it. And then you have management communicate the importance of the training. A lot of times you don't hear much from management except go to this training, you need to. So maybe if they communicate what they learned, why it's important to their job and the future of the company, people might be more motivated and engaged to attend it. Make it a job responsibility. So I think it's important for things like this to always have that on their job description or job duties, just because they need to know that you want them to continue learning. Mentorship. I think this is becoming more popular throughout the years, providing the opportunity of the older generation to mentor and teach the younger generation will create an environment of learning on the job and developing the skills they need directly for their work. So we'll also create an environment where they feel safe and can ask questions they may not ask in a large training with other employees. Constant team development. I think this is huge. So managers and supervisors need to always be developing their workers as a team, which gets forgotten sometimes just because day-to-day life gets in the way. They need to motivate each other and create a sense of trust so that in the future they can prevent any problems down the line. Suggestions for this team development would be schedule trainings once a quarter, which is just easy to do, once every 3 months to have your team attend a training, and then know that it's required to attend so many per year, so maybe 3 out of 4 you have to make sure you get to. And then make training fun so employees will enjoy it, because no one wants to go to a training that's boring, so make it more engaging for each person. Variety to keep people motivated. I think this applies to most jobs. No one wants to learn the same thing over and over again because that gets boring. So keeping things different will help with the engagement levels of the employees and give them the opportunities to enjoy their training and development if they can actually pick a training that looks interesting to them. Suggestions would be ask the employees for a subject they're passionate about, because oftentimes they don't get asked, and then end up attending things they don't care about and not learning or retaining any of it. Do research on current trends to stay competitive. So whatever industry you're in, try to look to see what your peers are doing to make sure your employees are staying up to date. Use different teachers with different styles of teaching and presenting, which will be more engaging. And so, ask them to present something before the training to see their style and see if that fits what your employees need. These are my references from the studies that you guys are welcome to look at and read into. Other than that, thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you all have a great day.